Thanks for sitting with me. I wanted to start by asking you, what was Amanda like when she was a little girl?
She was like fire on wheels. She was so spirited, so active, and actually as her life progressed, it made sense that she came up with a ADHD diagnosis. Like she was, the minute she was born, she didn't stop moving and she didn't sleep and she just kept going and going. So keeping her occupied as she was when she was young was always a huge endeavor. She loved to sing. She loved art. She was an active child, so she wasn't athletic, but she liked sports. She figure skated, she did gymnastics, she was a cheerleader. So she was always a self-starter and self-motivator. I was fortunate that as a teacher, both my kids went to the same elementary school that I taught at. And so I could see everything that they did in school and their concerts and their sports days and their field trips. Basically saw them 24/7. I'm really lucky that I got that. So I saw the stuff that she did in school, things that she started, the little groups and the clubs. I also saw how she interacted with friends at that time. I think that her energy and enthusiasm overwhelmed her friends at times. And they couldn't handle her. She also had a learning disability, which if things were moving too fast or if conversations were moving too fast, she had a real hard time following them and keeping up.
Right.
And sometimes she would probably say things that she didn't mean or didn't realize that she was saying them, and they were misconstrued at the other end. And then as she grew into preteenhood, conflict started because what she said wasn't really what she meant. And so it was kind of when I'm going to the staff room at recess time and you see her sitting on the couch with 3 other girls because there's been a problem, but you sort of have to I keep going because it's not my role as a mom in the school.
Right.
That her teachers could deal with it. Her singing was just wonderful. She just lit up her room when she sang, and she wanted to be YouTube sensation because that's exactly how she started putting her songs up. But also YouTube is where she was found by her online predator. She found a calmness using the internet because she was able to. She couldn't sit and she couldn't remember her math facts or her science facts or any of those things that required memory, but somehow technology and music were her 2 things that she could do really easily. So she used some of her spare time to be on the internet and to meet people and to play around on it. And so she posted some songs, and then some individuals started to respond to the music that she was making, and one of them was allegedly another teenager who got her in conversation and made her feel comfortable and got some details out of her about her life, and they started talking back and forth. He introduced her to other people in chat rooms, and then he asked her to lift up her shirt and show her body, which she did, and that he took a photo at the other end, and then that started the blackmailing and asking for more. And it was sent out on a adult porn site 2 nights before Christmas of 2010. And then it was Christmas break, so we thought that everything would be good, it would die down, but her peers didn't let it die down. And so all that anxiety and stuff, that's when it first started going. And I would say that that was the start to the end of her life.
Can you recall maybe what some of her feelings were? Like, what did she tell you about how she felt about the situation, other than that she was, of course, that brings up anxiety and depression? And
she was devastated. She was devastated that someone would do these acts and then try to blackmail her for them. I mean, she was 13, 14 years old, right? She had no idea the scope of all this. And actually, when you think of it, neither did the world, because we weren't really talking about sexting and sextortion 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
And would that be a reason why the RCMP maybe didn't look into it any further? It could have been, but in my heart, I think that probably they could have done a bit more, right?
Yeah.
So all those things were just layers and layers on top of her, right? And because of that image and her peers wouldn't let her forget about that image.
Right.
And so her confidence just sort of diminished. And so when she was a cheerleader, she was one of the flyers that they toss up. But with her confidence going, she couldn't do those skills anymore because she was always afraid. And so very different child from before
Right.
and after.
What were you feeling like? I mean, as a mother, I can only imagine watching your child go through such hardships. What was going on in your mind?
There was part of me that said I need to take away every piece of technology from her and take her away from all those friends that aren't really friends. They're
Right.
just people she knows. She wanted to be accepted. And so it was really hard to see people emotionally abusing my child. And so I would, find things that we could do together, but then mom and daughter hanging out, she wanted to be with other people, right? Mm-hmm. It's really heartbreaking to know that you can't do anything as a parent, but also I know now that I tried to do everything that I could. Making sure she was going to doctors properly and therapists and counseling, and we got all those things in place. Mm-hmm. And so she was a child that had the best of the best at the time, but still it wasn't enough. So I can't even imagine when families and kids aren't even getting anything, or they're only getting a little piece of it. As things erupted in her anxiety, we got referrals to mental health, and we got referrals to Act 2, which dealt with the sexual exploitation part. Of course, there always could be more, because with counseling, it could be once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month, and I would like to have someone there for her. At the time, I didn't realize how important Kids Help Phone is and can be. Kids Help Phone has counselors that are professionally educated at college or university. And crisis lines have volunteers that are trained, right? I think that would have made a big difference for Amanda. She asked me, Mom, why aren't there any support groups that I can join? I couldn't find any online. She did an attempt, and she ended up in emergency, and after the 12-hour wait and talking to 4 people and telling her story, she just got tired of it, and when they ask you, are you going to be safe? And she just said, yes, I want to go home. Yeah. And so they discharge. And so that's sort of, I feel, a problem of the system, because as a parent, I didn't have a voice because she was older than 14. If you're discharging a child from a psychiatric unit, there needs to be better follow-up care. And so I think that was where the system let her down. So Amanda died October 10th, and on September 10th, she was admitted into the adolescent psychiatric unit at Surrey Memorial. That weekend, she had an episode of heartbreak with a boy, and so it threw her over. And she came home, and she self-harmed a bit, and so I took her to emergency, and they asked me what I wanted done with her, and I said, this is the 3rd time I've been in the hospital in the last 6 months with an attempt of some sort, and so something more needed to be done. And so they had a bed at the APU unit, and they kept her there for 10 days. And when she came out, she was calm, and she had strategies. I mean, in the 10 days, she had one-to-one sessions with a therapist and a counselor, and she was a peer support group. That's exactly what the kids need when they're in crisis mode, right? But then when she left, when she was discharged, it all disappeared. It's like having this great high with nothing to fall back on.
Yeah, so you're getting all the support you need, and then all of a sudden you're kind of fed to the sharks. Here you go. You don't have any of that anymore. Maybe once a month.
Yep. And nothing that I could do. So that's why I wish that there had been someone that she could contact and talk to in a time of need, because she only survived 3 weeks out of the hospital. She told me during the 3 weeks' time that she got out that she missed it there, right? She hated it there, but she missed it there. And it's funny because what I found in her purse after she died was all the coping strategies. So she was in a good place after she was discharged from the hospital, except for the point where some of her peers decided to put online that she was in a mental institution for crazy people, which sort of, when you look at all the work that went into her making her feel better, it just crushed it.
Right.
And so things happened really fast. When I found out that she had died, I couldn't believe it. I thought that she was on a better path. So it totally blindsided all of us. I've managed to connect with many, many parents who have lost kids in the same manner. And everyone has the same feelings. It's just utter loss when you lose a child.
Your campaign, you want to talk a lot about mental health, and you say that people don't want to have conversations about it. It's such a stigma that people are uncomfortable even talking about it. I've experienced mental health issues. I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I've been bullied to a point where police have to been involved, and the emotions that stir inside of me, even just when you're retelling these stories, I can feel. I've also thought about suicide. That feeling of hopelessness is there, and it's so strong, and it doesn't even matter who you're talking to. Sometimes I feel like talking to someone is even worse, because they don't understand, and they just want to say, just be happy, just let's do this, but it's, people don't understand that that's not how you fix it. You can't just go outside and buy a bag and all of a sudden it's gone. It's there, and it's something that I will struggle with for the rest of my life. So with this campaign wanting to talk about it, what do you want people to take out of this? What do you want people to know?
I think there's so many layers about talking about mental health. And one of them, the first layers, is just opening up the conversation. It all started when I was actually in Ontario one summer, and I was at the falls, Niagara Falls, and I was with a young boy who he had suffered from some mental health stuff, and he wanted to light the falls purple for me being there, and he didn't quite get it together to do it. So then he said, well, maybe we could do it for October 10th, and I said, that's a great idea. So we got Niagara Falls to say yes, and then that little seed of an idea started to grow, and thought, okay, so if we're doing this in Niagara, why can't we light up the CN Tower in Toronto purple, and why can't we do BC Place purple, and so it just grew. And in the first year we might have only had a few places and some supporters, but it's all about opening the conversation. And when I brought it up with people, they didn't even know it was World Mental Health Day. And some people asked me, did you create this just for Amanda? It's always been there, but no one's talked about it. Any way to focus attention on it is a good way. And so I chose the color purple so that people would say, so why is everything purple? And then you can, just starting that surface level of discussion. Were you stigmatized?
I never told anybody. Actually, I was only diagnosed like 6 months ago. And I only started taking meds because I find that it's really helpful. And I only started that 6 months ago too. And so for a long time, I didn't talk about it. I was the type of person who everybody came to for help, for advice. All my feelings about being sad, I just kept to myself. I thought a lot of it was because of personal family issues or whatever, but a lot of it too was just, I couldn't pinpoint what was making me feel this way. And sometimes it would just happen, I'd have a really good morning, and then all of a sudden I was sad, and all of a sudden I felt like not doing anything. All of a sudden I wanted to just be in my bed, and I didn't want to leave the house, and I just would watch TV or...
That was like Amanda too. Like she couldn't figure out what it was, why she was feeling this way. And then I think probably somehow on the internet she found, someone told her about depression, and so she started doing research on it. And she came to me and said, this is what I have. She would send me all these things about, this is what I have, I want to get some help for it, I want to go see the doctor, I want to be put on medication if it's going to help me feel better. And she was actually being proactive on that. However, the problem is that you can be stigmatized, and she was being judged by her peers for being different emotionally. And seeing that if someone admits that they aren't emotionally feeling the same as someone else, that they'll be stigmatized by it, and that makes that person withdraw. So why would someone want to share about how they're feeling mentally if they have anxiety or social anxiety, depression, all those other things that fall into the mental health categories, if they're going to be made fun of?
I imagine too that the mental health of the people who are bullying is also important, and it's important to see. They're projecting something. So when someone is being bullied and when someone is the bully, there are, effects on both. And so looking at the mental health of both parties.
Yes.
Right?
Everyone's got a story, right? And someone bullies for a reason. It's all about root causes and why is this person doing it? What are they getting out of it? And where does it stem from? And what it is that a person has behaviors. Behaviors that can be changed.
In the field that I work in, behaviors are known as expressing something, a form of expressing yourself. And so I agree with you in a sense where people who have bullying behaviors, it's a form of expression. It's almost a cry for themselves for help. And sometimes it's hard to see that, especially when you're being bullied or if you know anyone who's being affected by a bully. And oftentimes, sometimes their parents are also bullies and trying to communicate with the parents to resolve something. And you can see there it starts just at home, not just at school. It starts at home as well.
Well, when you look at a baby when they're born as a blank slate.
Right.
And children do what they see and how the adults around them model behavior. And when I talk to the adults about what they're saying and what they're doing and what their kids are watching. And when I talk to students, high school students, and they may have younger siblings, and they are the models for their younger siblings. So it's really important how we interact and how we show proper behaviors so that the people that are watching us know how and what to behave like.
I find that the resources there are for mental health is either, you need money. It's not as often. And if you were to get something based on a cheaper rate, you have to wait a really long time.
Right.
So what is your opinion or your thoughts on the resources available to people who are suffering through mental health illnesses and people who don't always have the funds, or what's wrong with the system?
4 years ago, when I was looking for mental health supports for Amanda, there was a wait list. There's a huge, and then one of the problems was if you lived in one community and moved to another community, your file didn't transfer fluidly. You had to actually go and reapply to the new community. So that was one of the problems in the system. I had Amanda on a list in my area, and then she moved in with her dad, and everything had to be redone again. So that put her supports, slowed it down by 6 months, right? The ability to get supports is still lacking. And if someone gets diagnosed with cancer, usually they get their therapy treatment right away. If someone gets diagnosed with a mental health disorder, they're put on a wait list to wait for the next available clinician. Sometimes you can't wait that long, right? It's still, both of them are life and death, just in different ways. I've heard that sometimes with the kids, even adults actually, you have to have an attempt before you'll get seen by someone, which is really sad. A friend of mine who had an attempt and she got taken to emergency, and they let her go. They didn't give her a care plan or whatever. I had someone really close to me attempt, and I became his advocate, and he got admitted and supported, and there was an aftercare plan. So sometimes it's whose voice is the loudest. And lots of people with mental health disorders, they won't talk about it with anyone, so there's no one to help them.
Right.
They're just doing it by themselves. It's so wrong not to have things in place that are accessible when you need them. There are a lot of barriers, and I think there's a lot of barriers that occurred with Amanda's story that have now come to the forefront. I know that our health units are altering the way they do intakes for kids, so there is more things being done. Probably not enough,
Right.
but changes have been made since 2010.
I find that I'm just quite similar to Amanda. I like to sing. I made YouTube videos too, actually. I could see that a child or an adolescent could fall into the same thing as Amanda. What can we do to prevent that? How can we let the children know that it's okay to have made mistakes and that it's okay to open up about them and not be ashamed?
It's all about trust and communication. And so parents need to be non-judgmental, that their kids are their kids, and you love your kids unconditionally. And kids need to know that they can go to their parents or the adult. It may not be your parent. It could be someone in your circle that you are comfortable talking to. And to parents, you need to build those trusted adults into your kids' lives, because if you don't have anyone to talk to, as you said, it's really hard. Kids are kids, and they're going to go through that experimentation phase. Sexually and with substances, it's all part of human nature, right? Unfortunately, technology has added another dimension where people feel that they can share things out on social media networks now, and they can go viral, and much to the detriment of someone's personality and their well-being, right? And there's some things that they can't do, like trusting people online that you haven't met before, whether it's in a gaming situation or in a social networking situation, because you don't know who's behind that screen. And like Amanda, she thought it was a 15-year-old boy, turns out to be a 35-year-old man. And so I think when you get those messages out, things will start to shift. I've had lots of parents said, well, we're going to cut my kid off technology totally. But you know what? They'll go find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's better to educate than to punish by taking away now, because there's other sources. It's building a trust. It's building that communication. We need to bring back family time and bring back things that our families used to do without the technology. Playing board games, reading books, journaling, building Lego. Those are the kinds of things we need to bring back.
What can you tell us about Light It Up Purple?
We've got LED signboards across Canada that will flash World Mental Health Day. We've got half of the CFL football teams in Canada tweeting and social mediaing out. We've got landmarks all across our country lighting up purple. It's another way to create that talk.
Knowing what you know now and everything that you've learned, what do you think Amanda would have to say about everything that's happening
Well,
now?
people tell me that Amanda would be proud. This is an interesting journey that Amanda has started. She started this journey. We're all just carrying it on for her. It sort of amazes me sometimes how people are still talking about her, how people are still wanting to listen to me. I just do this because I'm a mom.
Right.
And I'm a mom of a young girl who has an incredible story that she wanted out there, and she wanted change done. She wanted kids not to feel helpless or hopeless. And so it's up to all of us to keep that moving forward, right? And I think we can.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
I really enjoyed our time together and our chat. So thank you. I really appreciate it.